All right, it is Sunday, the weekend of October 15th, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action of the indexes this week, as always, starting with the NQ. A nice kind of move up this week, early in the week, and then hit about Thursday and hit this fib level, the 0.786 at 15,400-ish, and retrace back lower. If we look at the weekly here, that kind of is in line with this, continually making lower highs look. It really needed to break above this level to kind of give us a confirmation of continuing higher. On the 4-hour, though, it did look nice. We broke through this 15,000 level that really needed to break to create this higher high locally. And it made sense that we would come back up here to 15,500 or 15,400, excuse me, and then come back and make a lower low. But on the daily, it kind of just looks like this is a textbook place to create another lower high. So not really something that we can determine like definitively what's going to happen. I think what we really need to see is what's going to happen at 15,000, right? So if we can come back down and hold at 15,000, that would create our higher low that we need to see. Which would be a nice looking hold right on that level. Look at all that consolidation right there at 15,000. So that's the perfect level to hold. If we are going to see higher and break above 15,400, still on the weekly, talking about those lower highs on that higher time frame, it's pretty likely, I think, that we could see this 15,000 level break. And if it does, we're going to probably look somewhere down towards the 13,600. That is a big drop, but that's kind of the next area of major interest. You could argue that, this fib level, the 0.618, 14,400-ish, could be a hold, but we've seen so much consolidation just above it that I think a lot of the volume on the buying pressure is going to be taken out until lower. That's why we think about 13,600-ish, most likely being the area to play out. What do you think of that price?
Yeah, I think it's going to go lower if it doesn't hold 15,000. We see this area here. It could come all the way down, or hold this higher low off of this level here, and that would be an interesting thing to have happen. Not something you're gonna see. You're gonna read all about this awful economy if that happens, but that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, the recession calls will be in earnest for sure. Yeah, anywhere between 13,600 and where you pointed out down here, closer to 13,300, 200-ish. I mean, there's a lot of consolidation there, so it honestly looks nicer. I just think that this area being such a point of interest from the swing from the bear market in 22. I think there's going to be a lot of eyes there. Now, that I don't think that means that that's more important than the other levels that you pointed out. I just think that I would bet there's going to be a lot of buying there. You could see some chop, but I still think that if we get there, we'll probably see somewhere around this area, 13,600, 13,200-ish.
Real quickly,
Sure.
This higher area here is exactly where we had and we're not necessarily going to keep it, but that right there is the level that broke and produced the low that we currently have right now. Let me get a better view of that.
Sure.
So that's where the trend started that produced the new low. So that's why when it came up, it was such an area of interest, and that's why when we come back to it, we'll expect similar interest in that area.
Yeah, we actually have like a box there, so I mean, we've identified that for some time. It would make total sense, even from a bullish case. If we're talking about the monthly chart, it would just produce on the higher time frames a higher low. So that's why we're kind of talking about, you'll hear a lot of, if that happens, you'll hear a lot of people talking about, oh, it's the economy's breaking, we're going into recession. Until we see that area broken, it all still looks constructive. Be a nice discount too to get some longs in there. But kind of been on that long enough. Let's move to the S&P. Kind of a similar look, a little bit more clear on the S&P, right? So we kind of mentioned that we wanted to see this 4,400 level taken out. We did actually get a close above, but we didn't get our two closes above. So right now it's kind of looking similar to the NQ in that, we really want to see if this is going to move higher, we need some strength to the upside and kind of breaking through that area. Right now, it does look like a higher high and potentially could put in a higher low here. But again, if we look at the weekly context, we're just constantly making these lower highs here. So we really need, if we're going to make another higher high here, S&P has to get all the way back up above 4,500, which is quite a ways away. And I think it says quite a bit that we had such a significant sell-off from our move back up there this week on the S&P. I think that we could just as easily see lower. I think we talked about before we started up potentially looking at around 4,100 as a nice area to target here. So I don't really see too much difference between the ES and the NQ. I think they both, quite frankly, they do both look more bearish than they do bullish at this point. Doesn't mean that we couldn't see a rebound higher, but just got to go with the chart in front of us. Doesn't look as nice as we would maybe hope if we wanted to see higher. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just like the weekly down below. All these wicks, all this sell-off up here before we broke out, as it just looks real good for me. That green line there at 42 down to 41-ish. This whole area is going to be really interesting. And if we do get down there, you're going to want to look at the lower time frames and dial in your proper level that you want to enter at.
Yeah, I think we can go over that in detail if we end up getting there, because that will be such a significant area. We can spend a little more time on that. But yeah, well, NQ and ES look pretty similar. Why don't you go over and go ahead and give us the rundown on RTY?
The weekly looked pretty bad. It did come up and retest, but we closed down here below at the low area. It didn't quite make a new low, but we're gonna expect that. We don't really see this holding. It's not a high likelihood that that'll hold. So we are definitely looking for lower on the RTY. Just how low is a fantastic question. I could see it breaking these lows here, but at minimum these lows. So we could see this 1678 hold or come down to this box of liquidity here that we're expecting. We're expecting the big guys to kind of take out the stops that exist down here. So that's why we see that there. On the 4 hour, wrong one. We see that it didn't quite achieve the level that produced the low. It did locally, but that doesn't matter when we're looking at the higher time frames that are in charge here. So I would expect at least 60 points on the Russell and probably over 100 there. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly to you. I'm glad you pointed out the 4 hour, because I was going to talk about that too. I see this area, like right there, right on 1800. A lot of resistance there, breaking above, briefly act as support. Breaking that produced the next low. So that tells me that that's the area to watch, and we couldn't break above, and that's why we're going to go lower now. So, obviously it still looks just as bad on the daily, but the 4 hour really tells the story about why exactly we're going to see lower. I think this 1680 is a certainty. I think we're going to see that, and like you said, if it's really bad and there's a lot of selling pressure, we're definitely going to see 1620. So not a great look on the RTY this week. But we'll just have to see exactly if this 1680 or this 1620-ish is where it's going to actually catch a bid. So we'll have to watch that. Let's go ahead and look at gold.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on gold? Kind of an interesting move this week. This might be the most interesting chart of the whole week.
Oh, absolutely. The daily here on Friday was just a massive move up. what is that, $60?
It's
on
it's
gold
about
in one
60,
day?
70 points.
That's pretty
Huge.
wild.
And it really kind of needed something like that because, I mean, it was just getting pounded there. I mean, it was looking pretty bearish until we saw that. And, you know, it's maybe still not the most constructive look, but certainly this is what gold needs to do if it's going to actually move higher.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw this high that's just barely above the previous high, but it didn't hold up there, so we came back down to previous support, and it, you know, basically immediately just went right back up from last week. I think we both expect higher highs here on gold.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that kind of strong reversal move is a good look for gold, and certainly is something that it needed to break this. You know, you say what you will, the upward moves in gold have been pretty quick when it does move higher and make new highs, and you know, these retracements lower have been slow and prolonged. So this could be the start of seeing a similar move back to the highs. I actually really like where it closed. It actually closed above that 1923-ish level, I think, which was the level that broke that produced that huge downturn. So that's something that I like to see.
I think it's more likely we'd see 2000 than, say, 1700 or 1800 even.
Yeah, gold's looking great. Well, let's cover the Dow. You know, maybe not as interesting as some of the other charts, or even in the ES, the NQ, which, you know, we talk a lot about how some of these charts end up kind of mirroring each other, but it's just kind of consolidating. A lot of chop here around this area of interest. I think we talked about last week how maybe 34,000 even is probably more of a, maybe we should move that line eventually, but either way, you know, it kind of needed to decisively break above 34,000. We don't really have like a decisive break here, we just have this consolidation. You know, if that continues, we're still putting in lower highs and lower lows, so we want to see this move back above toward 34,400 if we want to see the Dow kind of regain some ground here. But we'll have to see kind of what happens. It's kind of just at an inflection point where it's really not obvious what's going to happen, so we need to see either a breakdown below 33,200 to produce a new low, or a break above 34,400 to produce a new definitive high before we can make any decisions. Right now it's just consolidating. Not really too much to look at there. You see anything differently than I do?
Just not particularly, just a small detail of this level, and it is the 4 hour, so it's not the strongest level. Right here that failed to produce the low. It is possible that we come down here and see it hold 33,480-ish. But I think the likelihood is that it, like you said, it needs to come down, produce a new low, and then it has an opportunity to come back up above on the higher time frame.
Yeah, well, until it decides to make some big moves. I'm surprised, even with all the moves this week, that the Dow actually really didn't move too much in terms of like actual, you know, this was a solid move on Monday, but we kind of just ended up moving to this level and consolidating, whereas the other ones kind of have a nice little arc. So it looks a lot cleaner on the other charts, where this one's a little bit more confusing, but again, we'll just have to see with those areas that we talked about. Let's go ahead and talk about oil. Man, oil has been... We have been pretty good on oil. Humble brag, right? We kind of have been talking for a long time about this box, and sure enough, if we hone in on the 4 hour, come right back down there, get a nice pop. Actually, a gap up above an area that we wanted to see it break and close above. Got that close. Back down into the range and up above that area that it actually gapped up to and closed. So we now have on the 4 hour our first kind of higher high look. So this is kind of what, you know, we've been looking for on this pullback when we've talked about how this whole move to the downside back from 93.5 all the way back down here was totally normal and to be expected. Like, this is what price does. If it's gonna start an uptrend, it's gonna have to cool off eventually. This looks like it could be the start of what we need to see if we're going to make our way back up into the hundreds like we've been predicting. So yeah, I just see this as just a continuation of what we've been thinking, and probably higher highs before we see even these lower, these higher lows broken, I think. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think next week there's a really good chance we'll see it come up above this box we've got here. Let me see if I can quickly adjust that a little further over. So what we really want to see next week is some kind of up above and then hold, and then we've got the opportunity to keep going. But this is the level that needs to be gained and held to see these higher time frames produce higher highs. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think that's why we have that box there. You know, all that wicking into there. You know, it's a shorter area of consolidation, but still an important one. So if that's the area where it, you know, bounced off to produce the high and then broke below to produce our new higher low, then if we're going to continue that trend, we need to see this produce higher high above that area of consolidation. So yeah, I think we're seeing the same thing. Again, I really think that we're going to see higher highs much sooner than we see any lower lows. So we'll just have to watch that. We do kind of have, we just had this basic long-term trade setup where we took the low of that range that we drew and kind of targeting some of these untested support areas, because we actually expect these very likely to, these tested areas from the past will very likely just get blown through. Like now that we've tested 93.5, that's not going to really hold up. If we get back there, I expect it to move to $100 pretty quick. So, you know, it could be a nice longer term trade, something around this consolidation area up toward sort of this untested area around 115, 117. So oil's got some good opportunities. Let's go ahead and move toward the dollar. Why don't you cover the dollar for us?
Yeah, sure.
I know we talked about last week how, you know, oh, that's the first red candle in a really long time, and it's a bearish looking candle, but that didn't really matter given the trend. Sure enough, here we are.
Yeah, the weekly it the previous week came up and then closed down below, and we've seen that we're printing up above the last week's close. So this looks pretty good for higher. What we need to see is a gain of 106.8 here again, and then a hold of it, and we'll see higher highs. If it rejects this level, we'll have to see a little bit lower here before we can get back to going up higher. Maybe 105, yeah, just below 105.5 would be the low if it rejected and came back down before it went back on its way up. And on the monthly, you can see how it's doing just fine. There's nothing in here that's concerning for longs. So we're still looking at this 109 area with the monthly outlook.
I mean, I see the same thing. And if you look at the 4 hour, you can kind of see where that box kind of played in and why that area at 106.8 really needs to be broken. Right, so if we look at this is actually a little wick. I know we have an alert there, but little wick up there, and then this is kind of the area that tried to hold as support there, broke below, tried to break above, acted as resistance. So we know that's the area to watch to create this move back up to the upside. And so, you know, we actually got a little touch there in a pullback after a small consolidation on Friday. So I mean, that's why we are looking at that level and why that level needs to break to produce the next high. So
yeah, we haven't lost anything on the 4 hour yet. It's still on an upward move.
I will say this hold needed to occur, otherwise we would have lost the trend on the 4 hour. But again, you know, we did hold up there and move higher, so that's something that we want to see for the dollar to move higher. Looks good to me. I don't see any reason to be bearish on the dollar.
Neither do I.
Cool. Let's go ahead and look at KRE, banking sector. We kind of drew, or well, you drew this box, kind of identifying this key range that we really needed to see break to produce another move higher toward 45, and we actually got a touch just on it, and ended up rejecting and moving lower. So, you know, that's a pretty strong indication that we're probably not going to end up making it over 42 there. You know, if we look at the daily, that's it really is an important level that we just lost. Well, I shouldn't call it lost yet, technically, but certainly a strong rejection. I see this making lower lows now, and this trade is starting to look a lot less exciting. What do you think?
Yeah, well, on the daily, we'd expect to see it break this low, I think, most likely, and then maybe come down and test this area here that produced the leg up. Let's see here on the weekly real quick. We can still see that it came up and produced a higher high above the locals from previously. So this area right down here still looks pretty good to hold for now. But we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
But I could see lower.
I think it's going to be lower. I think it's going to 38. And I think that's, if we want to take a look at that here, that's like going to be, is this the monthly? Okay, there we go. Like down here, so that touch right there from the scandal on in May. That's kind of a nice area for it to come and hold. That still to me would look like we have this close here that if we consider this a low, which we are, that would be a lower low look. So what would need to happen is we would need to see it come back up. Potentially it could reject somewhere and find support higher than that low if that occurs, and then we could start to regain this bullish trend. But if 38 doesn't hold, it's going to be a bloodbath, I think, for KRE.
At least 33.
We're getting to the point where this is at the make or break. I already said that I think that we needed to gain 42 and to break above 45, and we haven't done that. So this is starting to look a little bit spookier, but I would say 38. I think we have it marked 38.50. That's like the last area where I would consider taking a long trade on this.
Yeah, I agree. 38, and then if that doesn't hold, 33 or lower.
Or lower. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll have to, our new catchphrases, we'll have to wait and see. Hurry up and wait. But I think we have a good idea of where things are headed, so... Anyways, thanks for tuning in to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. See you next week.